Thank you all for joining. Assalamu alaikum. Peace be upon you, everyone. Welcome to the Muslim Interfaith Weddings webinar. We're so happy to have you here with us today on this Saturday. Thanks for taking your time. Before we get started, I would like to go over the features that we have available to you that can be used throughout the webinar. So first, let's start with the chat feature. So on the bottom of your screen, you will see an area for chatting, and you can put comments on there. And just to kind of get everything started, we would love to know where everybody's tuning in from. So definitely drop your locations on the, so that please be in contact throughout the program. If you have Q&A in the bottom of your screen, we will keep an eye on the questions that are coming in, and we'll address these questions towards the end of our webinar. So please feel free as we go through the program to write in your questions. That way, we can keep an eye on it and maybe address it, and we may even address it beforehand. So the purpose of this webinar is to provide resources available for Muslim interfaith couples through the Muslims for Progressive Values organization. I want to remind you that we want to be respectful of everyone's time and the hour that we have allocated to this. And I'm aware of different viewpoints that can arise with conversations like this, and that is perfectly fine. But I want to also remind you that this is not a space for any debate or arguments, but simply we're just here to share a resource for our interfaith couples. I will now pass it on to Ani. She's the founder and president of Muslims for Progressive Values, to kick us off with a prayer.
Thank you, Samia. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahmanir-Rahim. Maliki Yawmiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. Amin. Thank you, Samia, for the introduction. Back to you.
Oh, thank you so much, Ani. That was so peaceful. I love that. I just want to take just 1 second to kind of acknowledge the chat, for the panelists, Jamal, Ani. Like, there's so many people joining from everywhere. The Netherlands, San Diego, Dallas, Texas, Scotland. This is amazing to have so many people from all over, not just the United States, but all over the world. So thank you all for joining. So now I will give you guys an intro about myself. So my name is Samia Brassfield. I am the owner and lead planner for SB Events Company, where we serve all couples, interfaith, non-interfaith, interracials. You can go on and on. We just love helping couples. We help them plan their wedding and events. And I'll quickly share with you guys, the reason behind moderating and having this discussion today with Muslims for Progressive Values. There are some amazing wedding planners that I already see that joined in with us today. So what I'm about to say next, they definitely would probably agree with me because they are probably experienced the same thing as myself. So we as wedding planners, we have such an intimate view of a couple's love story and their families, and we spent countless and countless of hours with them throughout their wedding planning process as we produce their events. During the planning process, couples usually come to us as wedding planners for so much advice and for us for resources as well. We may not have the answers to everything, but we try to connect couples to what they're looking for. And in my journey as a planner, I have seen interfaith couples who experience challenges when it comes to finding an imam, officiant, or priest who can conduct their marriage. And I specifically see it more often for Muslim women and our brothers and sisters in the community. And a lot of times I'm not able to that aspect, but what I can do is connect couples, with the support that they need to make their event, but they're able to get married, because what's the purpose of a celebration if you can't get married? So we teamed up with Muslims for Progressive Values back in 2012. They were one of my childhood friends, and that they for women's rights and on today about. They're frequently mentioned in so many different wedding platforms that I'm in, and they're not even part of those platforms. So it blows my mind that everybody talks about them. So I thought it would be a great idea to hear directly from them and kind of learn more about what they have to offer when it comes to officiating services. So with that being said, I will now pass it on to our panelists, and we'll start with Ani. She's the founder and president of Muslim for Progressive Values.
Good morning. Hello, everyone. Thank you for your attendance here, and I hope you will get a lot about the work that we do. And Samia, thank you so much for reaching out to me to organize this event. You've been an incredible partner with us on this. My name is Ani Zonneveld. I am the founder and president of Muslims for Progressive Values. And I will first start out by speaking a little bit about myself, my background, and what is Muslims for Progressive Values, and a little bit about the officiant work that I have been doing. And so I am born in Malaysia. I'm of Malay heritage, born, raised Muslim. And sometimes I have to explain that to people because my last name is Zonneveld, and people get confused. What is a Jewish person running a Muslim organization? But it's a Dutch last name. And I came to the United States to go to college. I graduated, and I wanted to do music, and so I moved to Los Angeles. And I was in the music business as a writer producer for about 25 years, and I've won awards, and I've done quite well. And then 9/11 happened, and I decided, well, probably the best way for me to contribute to the American society, or their image of what Islam is or Muslims are, is to do an Islamic pop CD. And in the process of learning or relearning Islam for myself, I was really blown away by how liberating the Quran was. It was very much about social justice. It was very much about inclusivity, and I was really appalled at, well, why are we not then practicing these values? And so the first step for me was to do that Islamic pop CD, and it was also very surprising that none of the Muslim retail stores would sell it, because they said the Muslim voice was awrat and needed to be covered, and it is by default sexual. And because I used all the musical instrumentation, it was therefore again haram, because Prophet Muhammad only used a percussion. And this was in 2003, soon after 9/11. And so at that point, being raised as a Muslim, I've never encountered this type of theology in my life, and this was all new to me. And that coupled with the fact that inherently Islam is progressive, and inherently the first converts to Islam were women and the enslaved and the oppressed. It wasn't the rich, straight people and of the higher caste or class. And that in itself says a lot about how Islam really has resonated for the society. And so I felt that as a Muslim, a transplant to Los Angeles, I didn't have a society, a community around me. I wasn't raised in a community here, so I was very much an outsider. And I felt that, well, why not create a community that really reflected the values that the Quran was really promoting, and that I felt was really still short in the way we practice Islam. And that also being in a mixed marriage, interfaith and interracial marriage, I wanted also a space that was welcoming of such a family such as myself. And as a result of that, I created the Progressive Muslim Community in Los Angeles in 2006. And it was really powerful to see that a lot of the message of inclusivity and non-discrimination really resonated with a lot of American Muslims, and I had no trouble, building up a community base. So I also wanted to create this community as a result of finding that space for a family such myself, but then really also discovering that there were other Muslim women that wanted to marry, that were kind of stuck in the rut. They were in interfaith or mixed marriages, relationships, and they could not find anyone to officiate their wedding. And so by default, I kind of fell into this officiant marriage services, and it was really not a desire to really to lead the community in such a spiritual way, but it was as a result of the need of the society. We have so many needs in our American Muslim societies that the traditional mosques are not providing for, and Muslims for Progressive Values is filling in that void. And so one thing led to another, and it's just been, I've done hundreds of weddings since 2006, and I've been roping in other officiants to be a partner with MPV to do these services because, obviously the United States is a large country, but now we're also getting requests from all over the world. And so that's been sort of the history of myself, the creation Muslims for Progressive Values, and also the officiant services that we provide. So I won't say much more except that I want to describe a particular wedding, and the best way to do that is to show a clip of a video. Let me describe it. This is a segment of an interfaith wedding that I did, and it's part of actually a documentary that is about me, and it's called Al Imam, and it's on PBS. And alhamdulillah, this documentary was done about 5 years ago, and it's still getting picked up, and it's still making an impact, and it's still actually really starting a hard conversation about interfaith marriages, about female women, religious leaders conducting leading prayer, all the rights that is actually inherent to Islam that was really denied to women, and also LGBT rights. And so this documentary really is shows the body of work that I've done within the context of Muslims for Progressive Values. And so the video is one of a woman, an American woman of Pakistani heritage, marrying a man of Polish heritage who's Christian, but also has Jewish families in his tradition. So you will see a beautiful blend of all these services, and yet really adhering to Islamic principles and Islamic tradition and requirements. So this is really the crux of it, and how we blended all of these traditions is really a beautiful example of inclusivity. So with that, please, AIM TV, please play the video. Thank you. صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. Amen. The path of those whom thou hast favored, not the path of those whom earn thine anger, nor of those who go astray. You guys good? I would love to use that as the perfect example of what an American interfaith wedding should be. Yeah. Alhamdulillah. So I hope that really gives you a really nice clip of what your wedding could look like. And so with that, I pass it back on. I pass it on to Jamal.
Thank you, Ani. Assalamu alaikum, everybody. It's very nice to be here. I got involved in this because Ani asked me to a couple of years ago in 2016. Well, I've known Ani for a long time, back for quite a while, and I've admired her work and been kind of a part of MPV. But the reason I got involved in this part of MPV as an officiant is because I had some experience marrying a few American couples, not Muslim couples, but just people that didn't have someone to do their weddings. And when that information, I guess people who were in that audience got out and they saw how my wedding went, I got requests to do additional ones. And that came to Ani's attention. And then she invited me to do weddings for MPV. And that's been one of the singular, most fascinating and enjoyable and self-fulfilling experiences that I've had. And I'm very happy to be able to thank Ani here on this webinar and to be able to share those experiences with all of you a little bit today. I want to start by giving you a bit of an introduction about my background, because I think a natural question is, well, who are you in particular to be doing this? What experience led you to do this? Why are you involved in this line of work? So I'm going to start by talking about myself for a little bit, just because I feel like that foundation is relevant. And then I'll spend most of the rest of my time later in the program talking about the work that we do with couples. So I was born to a Muslim father from Pakistan. My mother was from the Netherlands. She was born a Christian. She made an effort to absorb Islam when we were kids, but as she got older, she reverted to her Christian faith. My parents' religious differences were a source of great conflict and tension between them. Caused a lot of stress for us kids. I was the eldest of four. And to us, to be perfectly honest with you, it seemed at times like they should have gotten a divorce. Somehow they never did. Both of them were very devout and devoted to their scriptures and to their religious traditions, probably more than most parents that I knew, certainly, that it seemed. My dad learned to read fluent Arabic in his retirement. He went to Hajj and Umrah 3 times, made a study of the Quran, really studied it, didn't just read it, and would love to share what he learned about it. Drove every morning to his favorite masjid, not just for Fajr prayers, but also for his halaqah study group. My mom had Bible study every Tuesday night and on the weekends, and they disagreed very strongly about religion. Things like which scripture was the true word of God, which scripture was changed, which, and of course, very difficult religious disagreements. And this went on for a long time until my dad developed lymphoma a few years ago. And then they stopped arguing. They focused on more immediate and some would say important concerns. My mom took wonderful care of my father until he died this past December. January would have been their 41st wedding anniversary. Despite their religious differences, my siblings and I were raised mostly in a Muslim environment. That's probably a function of the way our families were constructed. My father had 7 siblings, and so I had a total of 27 first cousins on my father's side. On my mother's side, I had 2, and they were both in the Netherlands, so the influence was a little bit imbalanced there. Of the 27 first cousins on my father's side, 13 of us married Muslims, including me. I've been married for 18 years to a beautiful and wonderful, strong Muslim woman. There were also 12 marriages to non-Muslims. And of the Muslim marriages, of the 13 Muslim marriages, 9 of them are still intact. There were 4 divorces. Of the interfaith marriages, of the 12 interfaith marriages, 6 of them are still intact. There were 6 divorces. So what does this tell you? Well, first of all, it should tell you that in my family, at least, you were more likely to stay married if you married a Muslim. 13 marriages, 9 remaining. The interfaith marriages had a higher failure rate, 12 marriages, 6 remaining. If I had to guess at the reason for this, it could be because with the Muslim marriages, there are some more common values that we all learned as kids that maybe form the glue that keep us together. Not to say necessarily better values, but common values, compatible values. But I can think of other reasons as well that might have led to that are maybe a little too long to list here. Second, in my parents' case, they had an interfaith marriage that lasted over 40 years. They raised 4 kids together. So in the basic facts, their marriage was a success. But as their son, I witnessed a lot of turbulence and confusion over religion. And so to me, it's one very vivid example that even though an interfaith marriage lasts, it can be very complicated due to the mixed faith background. So definitely interfaith marriage for my family has not always worked out well. But the most important thing that I can conclude from my family and my extended family's experience, and this is probably the most important thing that I want to share with you with these caveats of an interfaith marriage out of the way, is that for my family and for my family as first-generation Muslim Americans, we've seen that it has been very complex. Out of the 27 of us, out of me and my cousins, only 9 of us are in Muslim marriages today. Some of us, if you met them, you'd know instantly they were just not meant to marry Muslims. They were just raised too Americanized for it to make sense. The only way you could have gotten them to marry Muslims is if you strongly pressured them or forced them to do it. And no doubt, hopefully we can all agree the worst marriages of all are the ones that are forced, the ones where one or both spouses never had their hearts in it in the first place. Second, some of them might feel that they were pressured and the results have been mixed. Some of them have married whomever they chose, Muslim or not, and they either made their own mistakes or found their own happiness. Many people out of our 27 first cousins, they married a Muslim first and then it didn't work and then they married a non-Muslim. Others, they married a non-Muslim, didn't work, and they married a Muslim and they found happiness. So you have all the different results there. And then some of them, perhaps in some ways the most poignant, some of them could have had a chance at a successful marriage. And I'm talking here, interestingly enough, only about the women. Some of them could have had a chance at a successful marriage, but the love of their life happened to be not Muslim, and their parents were not ready for it. And in my family, those people are single today, well into their 30s and 40s. And I don't know if they have regrets or not. Their moms certainly do, about maybe putting too much pressure on them when maybe something could have happened. But that happened in our family as well and happens in a lot of families that I know. I do know that all of us, out of the 27 of us, we were all raised in this hybrid, putting quotes, hybrid Muslim American culture around matrimony that treats boys and girls, sons and daughters, so differently. According to our community's scholars, sons are allowed to marry people of the book. But if you think about it in America, there are twice as many Jews as there are Muslims. So even if you count just the Jews, Muslim sons have 3 potential marriage partners for every one that a Muslim daughter has. That's just if you add Jews. And on top of that, 70% of America identifies as Christian. There are 110 million Christian and Jewish men in America. There are less than 2 million Muslim men. So what do you think the chances are that all 15 of my girl cousins could have married Muslims? How many of those 15 marriages for my girl cousins would have had to have been forced in order for us to have made that happen? So when you hear this story of my family, I feel like to some people, it may seem like that I'm the last person who should be giving people any advice about marriage. And to those people, I respond, I'm not here to tell you how to have a successful marriage. I'm here to talk to you about weddings, how to have a wedding that brings the family together. So marriage is, of course, up to all of you. I got involved in marrying people almost 15 years ago. As I mentioned, when my best friend, a good man who happens to be a non-Muslim, asked me to marry him and his wife. In that wedding, I shared my reflections of marriage. People in the audience enjoyed it, and over the years, people have kept asking me to conduct marriages, so I've kept doing it. I marry anyone who is legally allowed to get married under the law of our land, and I have no better way of marrying people than by reciting what little Quran I know, because it brings people peace and it brings families together. And to me, that's Islam, and that's how I approach this kind of work. Thanks very much. I'll give it back to you, Samia. Who's next?
It's Samia, but I think she's frozen. Oh, she fell off. Oh no. Okay. I'll take the lead until she jumps back on. Oh, there you are. Go ahead, Samia, you're muted.
Oh, there's Samia. Okay.
Samia, you're muted.
Sorry. I have no idea what just happened. It just disappeared on me, and I'm glad I'm back. Thank you, Jamal, for sharing your story. This is the first time that I'm like hearing your personal story, and I have so many questions for you. And maybe, you know, it could be something that we talk about maybe in a next seminar, or, you know, if we can't cover it all today. But I think sharing your personal experience, I really enjoyed listening to that. And I'm sure people in the audience can agree as well, because you shared the challenges and also how it still could be possible. um, and you know, have kind of see both sides of it, because it's really important to know that, you know, being in an interfaith or even just an interracial marriage, it can be tough. It's not for everybody. But I will also say that even with same religion marriage, there's issues that come up. You know, we can't say, oh, every who you are. You can both be Muslim, you can both be the same race, but there's still issues in a marriage. And I guess being interfaith can add another layer to it. But, you know, that's why there's therapy, there's counseling, there's relationship coaching. And I just think, you know, I'm not a marriage expert. I can plan a wedding left and right, but I'm not a marriage counselor. But I will say that to me personally, being in an interracial relationship and having, you know, in-laws who's Christian, and you know, my husband and I we're Muslim, but still, you know, I have a Christian family. And one of the things that I think is really important is to have that conversation before moving forward to your marriage. Like, have that conversation with just the couple, like just the two of you, before involving any family, before involving anything, because it's gonna be a ride. And you know, if you love each other and you feel like this is the right thing for you, then you just fight through it. But that's just my piece of it, so I'll get off my soapbox. And right now we're gonna go into some of the questions that I have collected from people before this webinar. And I thought they were great questions that can, you know, give a lot of time to get some more insight from Jamal and Ani. And then I don't see many questions coming in yet from the Q&A. So please, if you have any questions, use the Q&A feature. I did see one or two or some comments in the chat box. So that is great. Feel free to ask anything you want. If you want to do an anonymous question, there's an option to do it anonymous. If you just want the panelists to see, there's an option for that. And if you want the public to see, then there is an option for that as well. You have all three options to get what you need across. So just to kind of go into some questions that I have, I'm gonna quickly switch to gallery mode. And now you guys should see all three of us, hopefully. And so to kind of start off with the questions, one of the most important is, Ani, Jamal, what is your why? Like, why do you do what you do? I think that's so important, because that's the root of how you came with this organization, and just for anybody that creates something.
Yeah. I think it's a way, well, for me, the reason that I do it is a way to be as genuine and as honest and truthful about my Muslim identity, and for the Muslim women who who are really strong in their Muslim identity and feel they have the right to marry who they want to marry, and decide when, why, how, what, why they want to marry, all the stuff that is given to us as Muslim women in the Quran 1400 years ago that we are still fighting for. And so it's a no-brainer that once you understand the real truth about the Quran, that is the way to really live truthfully. And the reason too is, when I receive these calls, sometimes from Australia, Malaysia, from so many different parts of the world, from Madagascar, wanting an officiant that would marry an interfaith, a combination between a Muslim woman and a non-Muslim man. Oftentimes, you know, the call would start, I'm in interfaith relationship, and I'm desperately looking for someone to marry me without him converting and without me converting. And I've called so many mosques and so many imams, and they've all turned me down. Will you do it? And when I just say yes, of course, and they just burst out crying right then and there. And it's so heartbreaking to see these young women going through that trauma that is so unnecessary. And a lot of it has to do because of the way we were raised on when it comes to the theology of it, which I will get into later. But the injustice of it is really what motivates me. So that is the why.
Thank you, Ani. I think you said it very eloquently, and it's hard to add something to that. But the thing that resonates in my mind is I feel like we're able to, I feel like I've been in the position where I can solve problems of families that remind me of my own. And that's a very nice feeling to have, that you see these difficulties and you see that maybe you've learned something from it and you're able to bring that experience to help others. The most common situation that I face is when you have a Muslim woman, and yes, most often it's a Muslim woman because of the incongruity between how we treat people of different sexes in our community. But we have a Muslim woman who's decided that they are going to get married to this person that happens to be non-Muslim. So we're not out there trying to convince people to have interfaith marriages. And as you heard from my personal story, if you asked me, should I have an interfaith marriage? I might say, well, maybe not, but if you've decided, obviously, then the question is, how are we going to do this? Not should we do this? These women that I meet, they're all adults, many of them into their late 20s and 30s, educated people who have weighed the options, and they've made a decision that they feel is right for them. And so the question is, how are we going to do this? Is she going to have the Quran recited for her on the biggest day of her life? Or is she going to be married by a minister or a judge? Is she going to elope? Is her mother going to see her married in the way that she remembers being married? Or is it going to feel even more foreign and awkward than it needs to be? Does the family have to be uncomfortable at the ceremony? Is her family even going to come? There are plenty of families who are like, we're not coming. And not only are we not coming, but if you do this, don't come home. And it's not right. It's just not. So what we, most of the situations that when we get involved in those situations, I just look at it, I'm like, look, number one, we're bringing the gift of the Quran, which is a balm for a lot of people. It is soft, it's healing. We're bringing this softness and understanding to people. It's educating the non-Muslim spouse about Islam, because you have to keep the non-Muslim spouse in mind as well. It's a lot for a non-Muslim spouse to encounter this type of resistance where they say, listen, I love this person, I want to marry this person, but what in the world am I getting into with this family and this community? And being able to kind of intercede on that and help people understand what the true Islam is, and what and how it can be and so forth is useful. And also helping the family understand that they are not alone in facing this. It's hard, again, for sometimes for families, they wonder, with the feelings that they have about Islam and how they understand it, it's a lot of pressure for them, especially if it's the first time they've got a daughter that's presented this to them. They face peer pressure from other members of the family, from their community, and it helps to be able to talk with them and listen to them and try and find a compromise between both sides. So it seems like listening to people, bringing compassion and being open-minded helps make most situations better. This is what the families that we worked with have told me, and this is what I pray, inshallah, is the case as much as possible.
I always forget to get off mute. I think that's probably the experience for all when you're on Zoom chat. So Jamal, Ani, I have a question just to key off of that. Are there any, and I'm always looking for it, but I just don't know what the good source is, but are there any resources that kind of tell us what the statistics are as far as growth? Like, are there more couples now than before that are doing interfaith marriages or interracial marriages? I guess that's two different things, but any insight on that part, or or you guys will not have that data?
Well, we don't have hard data, but what I can share some experience to tag on to what Jamal was talking about is that, I remember when I was first starting out doing these interfaith marriages, it would usually be very small. It would be usually organized with the support of the non-Muslim partner and his family in the non-Muslim family's backyard, and maybe a Muslim sibling would show up, and that was consistent for some years. And then in the last, I would say, 8 years or so, it's become more and more grand, and it would involve both sides of the family. And now we're seeing the parents themselves, the Muslim side of the parents themselves, reaching out to us and to help arrange and support the Muslim daughter. So it has shifted. I mean, we've done hundreds of these weddings, and I think we're in the process of really tabulating them and actually starting to create communities around this, because by this time, many have had families, children of their own, and so this is the next stage of the work that we're doing. So, okay, fine, we are creating these, we've created this officiant services that is inclusive and is rooted in Islam. That's number one. Number two, how can we create communities around it? Because that support is so necessary. Even, sure, you've married off, but there is that constant pressure. When is he going to convert? And how about your children? And there's this constant from some families, not from all. And I think for us to keep reminding and keep building the communities around these couples and their children is actually going to be so important for it to be a safe space, for you to really be true to who you are and whatever that truth is. And so that's sort of like our, not scientific data, but I think there is going to be a research done by a university student out of Canada. I just got an email this morning from someone who actually wanted to do a research on that. So we'll probably be partnering with this person, and we'll keep you updated on that. But the experiences have been the volume of weddings that we've started doing have really exponentially grown over the years. Samia.
Thank you for that. I'm having a little bit of my next. Are you able to hear me, Ani and
Now,
Jamal?
yes. Now we can. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry about that. So let's go a little bit into. I just want to actually repeat the experiences from both of you, right? So Ani, you've been doing this for 14 years, and you and Jamal have been friends for a long time. And Jamal, you became an officiant in 2016, and then you're part of the board of trustees from last year. So going into a next question, and by the way, so our next question is, Ani, can you share some of the theology behind interfaith, Muslim interfaith?
Yes, absolutely. I have to do this every time when I speak to a couple, and also the parents, particularly the Muslim side of the family. Right. So the definition of marriage is between two souls of sound mind. That's the Quran mandate. And what's really important is the sound mind, because marriage is basically a contract in Islam, in the Quran. And that's why we have the Nikkah contract. Now, for you to do a Nikkah contract, and I'll explain why you have to have a Nikkah contract, is because you have to have sound mind in order to negotiate your marriage, right? And so that's why the couples that we marry tend to be mature women, professionals, and they tend to marry, outside the faith because of the environment that they're in. Now, The word that really enables us, justifies us theologically for us to do what we do is the word zawj, which means soul. And it is a non-gender word. It is very neutral. And so because of that, there is a fundamental, this word zawj really fundamentally defines and really levels the playing field on who marriage is open to. You have to be of sound mind and between two souls, because it's a commitment, an agreement, and therefore a contract between two souls, period. The fact that we've interpreted it as between man and woman, that is an interpretation, and that is patriarchy, and that is society's interpretation of it, and misogynistic also. And that's why for centuries we've been told Muslim women cannot marry non-Muslim men, right? We've been lied to, basically. And so that's why when I do weddings, there is a verse that I recite, Surah 30:21, and I'll say the English verse, and the translation is, and among his signs is this, that she, the Creator, created for you mates from among yourselves, that you may dwell in tranquility with them, and put love and mercy between your hearts. Verily, that are signs for those who think. Okay? And so again, it's a partnership between two souls, and it's for those who think. Now, the reason that we have this contract is, if you look at Islam, at the inception of Islam, and a society even after Islam, for 1400 years particularly, it is very tribal. And in some places still, it is incredibly tribal. Meaning, when the woman marries to the man, she belongs to the property of the man. She has to adopt the culture of the man, the religion of the man. And in some instances, she is cut off from her own family. And that is why, if you look at some Muslim societies, at the wedding, you see the family, the mother of the bride, the Muslim bride, wailing. And this really harks back to centuries ago, when the act of marriage really is you losing your daughter, right? Obviously, that's not the case in the 21st century, particularly now in the West, and particularly here in the United States. You don't lose your daughter. If anything, you gain your son, your son-in-law. You gain that whole extended family in addition to that. And so the idea of marriage, how it has been constructed and how it has been interpreted and translated to us Muslims for a long, long time, is a tribal interpretation. It has nothing to do with Islam. And that's why the Quran mandates the contract, the marriage contract. So in the marriage contract, you as the Muslim woman, in a society where women had no rights, you can stipulate in that contract what your rights are in that marriage. You can stipulate, now, back in those days, 1400 years ago, you can stipulate, on my mother's birthday, I have the right to go visit her. I have the right to work outside the home to earn a living. Stuff that has been given to us, in the Quran. And so the fact that this contract stipulates, you as a Muslim woman can stipulate what your rights are in the marriage, is the crux of that egalitarian values of Islam. Is the reason why in today's context, though, I would, especially in the state of California where I live, I would say, well, our Nikkah contract right now is actually upheld in our state laws, in our marriage and divorce laws in the state of California. So I would give that option, like, you don't have to have a Nikkah contract. Now, there is the mahar, which is a requirement, and so that I would stipulate that. But the mahar can take different shapes, obviously, because you can have the deferred mahar, which is, in our modern context, you have the life insurance where the beneficiary is your partner, etc., etc. So there's the context of what was started off in Islam as a way to give Muslim women their rights, nowadays has been carried over as if that is the be it and all there is to it, and that's the end all of it, whereas actually that was just the starting point, and how we progress to the modern society needs to be adapted to the context of the Quran, which is the rights of the woman. And so that is basically, in a nutshell, the theology of it. the key point here is that in the Quran, it also stipulates that Muslim men can marry people of the book. But it does not say in the Quran who the Muslim women can or cannot marry, but only to encourage Muslim women to marry a believer. Now, the definition of believer can be defined in many ways. Believer in the Quran is Muslim, the word Muslim with a small m. But what we've done in our religious tradition is to make Muslim with a capital M as a believer. That means as if to say that only Muslim are believers. Then obviously that is not true. And I mean, there's so much text in the Quran that talks about the different faith traditions. And so that is also a misinterpretation of the Quran that has really narrowed why how we've been told and taught that Muslim women can only marry a Muslim man. And so there's a lot of resource on this on our website. And Maisha will be sharing that periodically in the chat, and we'll also share it on the YouTube channel. And so I will leave it there for now.
Thank you, Ani, for that. That is a lot of information. And even for myself, like, you know, listening, my internet's unstable again. Okay, I think I'm back. A lot of the information that you shared, like even for me, you know, being Muslim, like I have to revisit that and really let myself understand it. And I'm sure for a lot of people in the audience as well. But that is very insightful that you had shared the theology part of it. I don't know, Jamal, do you have anything to add to it?
At a broader scale, because I feel like Ani explained it very well, and I'm not educated enough to even go into the depth that she did, and I know Ani has studied this for a long time. I think generally, I've always heard about the idea that the Quran is the Quran is a book of guidance, not a book of laws. There's no compulsion in the Quran. The Quran is for us, and the reality is that we all draw on it differently. So I think about the fact that there's no compulsion in religion or in any aspect of the religion, unless, you know, obviously there are some states and countries that live by Muslim law, and then it's the law. And I think everybody on this webinar is probably happy that we don't live in one of those countries, because they're probably pretty, you know, not the best places to live. I think about the fact that, as Ani said, guidance on marriage, it doesn't come from the Quran. Well, the Quran leaves it more open. It's the hadith and the legal opinions that originated mostly from jurists that lived decades and in some cases centuries after the death of our prophet, may peace be upon him. And those jurists lived in completely different times than we do today. Their opinions are not infallible. We're not, you know, we're not beholden to them. I think about the fact that Islam was always absorbing different cultural traditions from Arabs, from Jews, from Christians, from Zoroastrians. And the reality is Islam changed over the centuries. It's just I don't mean to pick on them, but it's kind of a Wahhabi fiction that Islam was this unchanging thing that was the same in the time of the Prophet, and now we're practicing it today. That's not the way Islam, that's not what made Islam great. That's not what made it spread to 1.6 billion people. And it's not how most families wish to live Islam today. So I think Islam is a matter of conscience between us and God. That's the most important thing.
I want to add something too, is that it was actually much freer and liberating during Prophet Muhammad's time.
It was, yeah.
Seriously.
It was a progressive
Muslim
tradition.
women were married to non-Muslim men. They were not forced to divorce. It was just incredible how liberating it was during Prophet Muhammad's time itself, and how it's, you know, as far as I'm concerned, when it comes to theology, since we're talking about theology here, as far as I'm concerned, the real Islam died when they buried him. That's when it just got corrupted. And it's a very harsh note to point to make, but that is my personal belief. And the fact that Prophet Muhammad, you know, appointed a female imam to lead a congregation in prayer, the fact that he was such a feminist in his tendency before the word feminist existed. If you just look at his character and the values that he was promoting, it's all about women's rights and the down and trodden. And so this whole, living our Islam from based on an interpretation of particular imams, whether Shafi'i, Maliki, etc., is, it's like, why are we not understanding the Quran for ourselves? Because we are mandated as Muslims to understand the Quran for ourselves. Why are we actually deferring that to the mullahs? And so that's what, as Muslims for Progressive Values, that is something that we've been so critical about. People, please read the Quran for yourself and understand it for yourself. And don't be such a sheep. Your responsibility is to read and think critically. That is mandated. God gave us the thinking capacity for a reason, and that's also mandated in the Quran. So that is, why it's important for us Muslims. It's not just about marriage. There's so much more. It just has this ripple effect. So that's why it's important that we, as MPV, we're creating a culture that is truly, that is egalitarian and what I think is true to Islam. Oh, one more point, sorry. It's not just about Abrahamic faith traditions, it's also about Hindus and Sikhs and all these other traditions that also believe in a greater creator. And so we've done a few Muslim Hindu weddings as well. And to hark back to some of those experiences, it's really quite sad to see the harsh and the rigidity of some Muslim and Hindu families against each other, against each other's belief system. And what's really surprising is we've had to restudy and relearn Hinduism for ourselves in order to really understand the context. It's really surprising to find out that Hindus also believe in that one God. I don't know, Jamal, if you want to add to that.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you bring that up. I found that in officiating those marriages, that's probably the most important thing to bring up. What I found is the Hindu definition of God is almost in some ways closer to the Islamic understanding of God as a lot of us believe in it, in the sense that it's, Allah is above everything, not comprehensible to human beings, first cause for everything that is beyond our understanding. That's absolutely something that the Hindu families, when we show them that we understand that, they're very grateful that we took the time to learn that about Hinduism. And the Muslim families are, of course, relieved to understand that, because they say, okay, well, we have a common ground, and it becomes a basis on which to build a relationship. So yeah, no, that's one of the many things that is interesting to find out about our work, Ani.
Unfortunately, we lost Samia, so I'm going to take the lead in this conversation until she returns. But when we talk about Hinduism, it's almost in how Muslims say, well, they pray to so many gods. But when we talk about the 99 names of Allah, we are starting to go down that path as well, as far as we uphold these values, but at the same time it's kind of problematic. Is that what it's similar to your 99 names of Allah, for example? And so while we're waiting for Samia, for those of you who are watching us on the YouTube channel, please, you can post your questions and then we'll try to go through them as well. And then again, please don't forget to put your questions in the Q&A section, not in the chat if you are on our Zoom webinar. So, Jamal, do you want to talk about the different styles that we offer? I know even though we have a particular context in the work that we do in officiating these mixed marriages, but yours is slightly different than mine. So why don't you go first?
Oh boy. Okay, that's right. So that I guess when we all got a chance to kind of write these our thoughts to these questions down. So when we were talking about different styles, I was thinking of different religious styles, like how you fuse different cultures. So I'm gonna, if that's okay, I'll start by talking about that, and then we can talk about our differences when it comes up a little bit later. But the thing that comes most to mind is so I believe that Islam is, when we say Islam is the universal religion, and I've heard it's something my dad said to me, and a lot of Muslims will say, I believe that, but I believe it as because Islam, as we learned it, is an expression of this one true religion, and that the way when the Islamic community grew up in the time of our Prophet, this was his understanding of this revelation that came to people before, and so there's one worship of God, one appreciation of God that created all of us. So when you think of this, then it becomes easier when you deal with the different faith traditions to be able to find common ground in them. So when you look at a Christian marriage ceremony, a Jewish marriage ceremony, Hindu marriage ceremony, and so forth, because you see this common ground, because you find the expressions are all of love, of oneness before God, of charity, of brotherhood and sisterhood. So for example, the Christian ideal of love, I found in talking to Christian parties to an interfaith marriage, is very similar to the Muslim ideal of spouses as garments to one another, as it's written in the Quran. They are a garment for you, you are a garment for them. This resonates very much with biblical verses. The Jewish ideals of family, of respect for elders, and faith in God through difficult times is something that comes out very much in the Shiva Brachot, which is the seven Jewish wedding blessings that are a very important part of a Jewish wedding. So it's very easy for us to add in a Muslim Jewish wedding. It fits very nicely, and people see the commonality. As we mentioned, the Hindu ideal of God, that's always a fun one to be able to bring out, that brings a lot of families together to understand that the conception of God is in both situations as monotheistic, a divine power above and beyond all else. And I saw somebody even in the chat was asking, well, how do you deal with like agnostic parties to a marriage? How do you deal with that in a situation like this? And my answer to that is and this is something that I've heard a lot of Muslim scholars say, even also, like if somebody is agnostic, it's because they haven't been explained the concept of God in a way that they believe in. Like they're like, well, I've heard it explained this way, but I don't believe in that. But if you hear God explained in the Muslim way as something that is a first cause, bigger than all of us, that we can't understand, and that we will one day return to it, a lot of them say, well, yes, that I can understand. That is the kind of God that I can believe in, and I can accept that understanding. So long story short, there are a lot of, it's about listening and getting to hear what people's religion and faith tradition means to them. And then that leads us naturally to figuring out how do we bring these things out for the couple in a way that's meaningful for them.
There is a sort of an understanding in the Quran too, though, because there's no compulsion in faith, and that you are always asked to question everything you read in the Quran itself. Now that is the definition of being agnostic, if there ever was one. And so, I think the broader context of agnostic is really questioning your faith, questioning creation, questioning everything. And the similarity between that characteristic of an agnostic and one described in the Quran is similar in that regard. And so for me, I think it is our duty to always question. I think that is one of the reasons why the Muslims of old were very adventurous and creative and scientific, and all the stuff that they came up with and they invented. I mean, that was because of their agnostic tendencies. It wasn't because they were just stuck and black and white in their thinking, and that was not that's why it was so rich, and that's why it was not just rich in wealth, but also rich in character and science and math, etc., etc., and the arts and the architecture. I mean, it's brilliant. And so that is the characteristics that I think that makes for a beautiful human being, whatever religion that is.
Ani, I've got a question for you. So this was an interesting one that we had when we were in the discussion and the prep for this. How do you deal with parents that feel that have anxieties about these kinds of things? Like, how do you approach that?
So there was a Muslim wedding that I did, a big one, and where the man didn't convert. He didn't, neither couple uttered the shahada, which for the non-Muslims on this webinar is the phrase that basically is your commitment, declaring your conviction to the Creator and Prophet Muhammad as his messenger, and so I was done with my part, and then the mother came up to me and said, Ani, there's been some rumbling by some of our more conservative Muslim families. Can you do a sermon to describe and to convince or reassure these families that this interfaith marriage is recognized in the eyes of Allah? And I said, no problem. So I did my 5-minute sermon impromptu, and I basically describe the meaning of Al-Fatiha, which was the surah that I recited at the beginning of this program. And it talks about leading a straight path. And so I basically describe, here is this couple that is starting their life together in the straight path, meaning not as hypocrites, not as him converting to Islam just to pretend, just to please you, but really living in his conviction. And she, as a Muslim, living in her conviction. That is the definition of leading a straight path and living it. So when you in the family are asking the non-Muslim to convert, you're not asking them just because you are really adhering to what this Al-Fatiha that you say 5 times a day at a minimum, and for some traditions even more. You're just doing it because you want to save your face. This is nothing to do with Islam. This is all about tribalism and your cultural upbringing. And you need to get with a program, and that is, if you're really saying the Al-Fatiha every day, so many times a day, what does that leading the straight path mean to you? If anything, we should be commending this couple that is starting their life in the truest form and the most honest and transparent way, rather than being hypocritical about this, fake conversion business. And for me personally, this is where we diverge, is that when parents, there's been some instances where it has been agreed upon the groom is not going to convert, and or the bride, whoever it is, they're not going to convert. But there was a time when I would be cornered by the mother, usually the mother, to say, could you please just say the shahada, just ask him to repeat after you. And I would get literally livid about this, because it is so wrong to be conniving like that. And I would just bring the parents into a room privately, and I would just basically lecture them on it, how wrong it is. And number one, because number two, you have agreed and they have agreed to this marriage that we're going to be doing, and then you are changing up on this agreement. That, ladies and gentlemen, is so wrong in the Quran, because it's all about being truthful and principled. And so let's start there.
You are, Ani, you are an excellent example of a strong Muslim woman. Anybody who says that Muslim women are cannot speak up for themselves need to meet you. Absolutely. I have, I'll take this as as a opportunity to talk about my process a little bit, because as we talked about, we do it a little bit differently there. I like to try to incorporate the Shahada if we can, if there's a way to do it, because it is, whether it's, because we could talk about the theology of it, and but I feel like it's above my pay grade. I just know that most families, they feel better if we include it in some way. So we try to look at it and say, look, this is a simple requirement. It's a belief in a God that is above all of us. So the same God that you and your family believe in, it's a God that we believe in. And I just say, that's la ilaha illallah. That's the easy part for people. Muhammad Rasulullah. The whole idea there is, I say, look, this is respect for, and respect for the teachings that our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam had, and the teachings that he brought to this community of 1.6 billion Muslims today. This is, you've got people in Indonesia and Malaysia and Pakistan and Saudi Arabia and US and China and Egypt, and all these people of different cultures. We're all bound together by these principles that he helped bring to us. And to get married, you're joining this community. And if you and this is how you do it. You say La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. And I liken it to when I was asked to become an American citizen. I was a Dutch citizen for all my life in this country. When President Trump got into office, my wife said, you better go get your American citizenship so you don't get tossed out of the country. So I went and I did my citizenship stuff. And I remember thinking, they gave me the thing I had to say. And they're like, if you want to become an American citizen, this is what you say. And I could have said, well, can we change this? And I don't know if I believe this. And, America had slavery and this, that, the other thing. You don't get to do that. If you want to become an American citizen, you say you say whatever the oath is that you say, and you say it just like they've always said it. So I say to my couples, I'm like, look, if for 1400 years, this girl's family, they probably haven't had anybody marry outside their family without saying the Shahada. So when I say, so can we say it from that perspective? And usually the family is okay with that. And a lot of the grooms that we speak to, they're okay with it too. They say, you know what? If you say it that way, I understand it. I can say it with sincerity, and the family accepts it. And I don't think that's dishonest. I think that's exactly what's going on, and that's what families want, and that's what a marriage ceremony is. A lot of times, it's a welcoming of people into the community. It doesn't always work, but it works and has helped a lot of family situations. So that's one different way to do it. Where's Samia? Poor Samia with her connection, huh?
I'm back. Do you guys hear me?
Good. Very good.
Do you guys see me?
Yeah, we can see it.
Yes, we can.
Okay. I'm so sorry, guys. What a day to have these connection issues. I totally missed all of the valuable information that you guys had offered. So did we just kind of cover how do you cater to the different styles of weddings? Was that the question you were answering, Ani and Jamal?
Yeah, pretty much. But I should also add, I mean, obviously we didn't go into the various details about how we do these weddings, because it really is, differs from couple to couple. And there are a lot of nuances that go into it. But obviously when you talk to our various officiants, once you download the pack, you can interview them and get a sense on who you want to have as your officiant. So and they will basically, with their vast experiences and our experiences, we maneuver through all these different hurdles and help structure it according to the needs of the couple, and to some extent the family as well. So it's hard to go into all the different differences, but we work through them.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you say differences, Ani, right? One of the things I wanted to ask you guys, so there's Hindu Muslim weddings, there's Christian, Muslim weddings, they're Jewish. So there's so many different, combinations. And I think there's going to be more of that as years go on. Can you tell me a little bit of how, what is the process for something like that? Like, how can somebody navigate through that? Like, do you guys offer different ideas on how they can maybe bring it in together and have a marriage ceremony? Is that something you guys do?
Yeah, I'll go first. I was gonna ask Jamal to go first, but like I've done Muslim Hindu weddings as well, and I've even done a same-sex Muslim Hindu wedding. So with the Muslim Hindu, it's a bit challenging to really infuse the two because the process is so very different, and the Hindu weddings are, you know, very elaborate, whereas in the traditional Islamic wedding, it's actually very simple. And so what I've done with the Hindu, it varies. Once it was a different stage for the Muslim stage, and there was beside it the Hindu stage, you know, where you have the fire, etc., etc. And so that was one service followed by another. There was another one that I did where it was really as best as we could to infuse the two. And so both myself and the priest were there side by side, and we basically infused, like I would start it and he would be in the middle with the Hindu wedding service, and then I would finish it off, for example. So, you know, there are different ways of shaping, and I think it depends on the circumstances of where the families are at as well. You know, sometimes one does not want anything to do with the other, and so it's two completely different services, one for the Muslim and one for the Hindu. And then and on a few occasions it's been a blend of the two. So that's an example of a Hindu Muslim wedding that I've done. And there's someone who's saying that, oh, you mean to say that Hinduism believe in God? Well, you know, there's a lot of readings that this person needs to read, and I'm just going to push back against this nonsense because this is public postings, and I will not tolerate that. Jamal?
I think, well, to add to how you said that, Ani, it depends kind of what the family is looking for and what's going to make them most comfortable. A lot of nikkahs that we end up doing, well, first of all, a lot of them, the nikkahs that we do, the couple is okay if we do just a nikkah that is inclusive enough where it's mostly a nikkah, but it's just understandable and relatable. Just like, you know, a lot of us would be okay if we had a child and they had a Jewish wedding. If it was a nice wedding, we wouldn't say, well, it has to be done this way, this way, this way. And a lot of cultures are okay with that. So we you know, the standard nikkah, the way we do it, works for a lot of families. But when if you have two situations where you've got both, you know, it's very important to both sides or both families where both traditions get a fair, you know, the proper time in the spotlight. I do think, you know, probably marginally the easier thing to do is to have two separate ceremonies, just because a lot of families, it's about the traditionalism, so they don't like to see things blended too much. They'd rather see things, you know, one done one way, one done the Islamic way, one done the way of the other culture, and you have a little space between them, and that a lot of times makes families happy. Sometimes we have had beautiful mashup ones where you say, well, look, we're going to have the two sides of two representatives here together, and then I'll always work with that officiant. You know, I'll usually just say to the couple, well, don't worry, give me their number, let me speak with them. I'll find out what they normally do. They'll learn what I normally like to do, and we'll find some way to fuse it. One funny story that I would love to share with people is that probably the most humorous one is I did a Muslim Hindu wedding where you had the Hindu priest could not appear. I don't know if it was because he had an issue with it or if he had a logistical problem, but the family put a big screen TV on the stage. And then when it was his turn to speak, I had to take the remote and turn it on and play him. So it was, but both families thanked me afterwards, and they said, you did, you know, that was one of the most memorable weddings that I did, because both of the families were very grateful, and they said, you did a great job of blending the traditions, and they really, I felt in their heart, they genuinely appreciated it, because the whole idea from the Muslim side is you want to show the best of Islam to these Hindu, you know, this Hindu audience that's there, where there's a lot of times there's these, you know, these latent negative feelings. So if you can show something that's inclusive from the Islamic side and you welcome the Hindu side, and the Hindu side is also able to have that stage, it's a tremendously cathartic experience for entire families. There were 400 people in the audience, and I thought that was just a great example of dawah, and inshallah that family, they remember it well. So lots of great experiences like that.
Yeah, I think that's probably the overall sentiment, right? Is how can we bring two families together in a way that is respectful and loving, and introducing in a way that is really inclusive, that we are God's creation, and praying in our own different ways. And I think people leave our marriage services when it is truly infused together the way it is, in a really uplifting and positive worldview. Because there's so much negative out there that when you see that, like, that was beautiful. Just bringing two people in love, wanting to spend the rest of their lives together, and then bringing their families along. That's a beautiful experience, and I think that's probably why we continue to do. That is sort of like a byproduct. A side benefit for us is to create that loving atmosphere.
It's not I feel like, and again, it's just to separate the wedding from the marriage. It's not to say that every interfaith marriage that happens is a good idea, just like every Muslim marriage that happens is not a good idea. But the whole idea is, if it's going to happen, let's do it right. That's in a way that makes the couple feel good, that we project Islamic values onto things, and that the family feels that their tradition is well represented to the non-Muslims in the audience. I feel like that's the goal.
Thank you, Ani. Thank you, Jamal. I want to go into our Q&As and even some questions in the chat, because we're almost at time, and we'll extend it for a little bit longer because of the connection issues that we're having. The only thing is, Ani, Jamal, I am not, because I got kicked off, I'm not able to see all of the questions that was here before myself, before I joined back in. Are you able to see those questions on the Q&A?
Yeah, we can see them. I can see them.
Okay. Did you want to go ahead and maybe read them and address them? I feel like a lot of questions can be very repetitive, so we can do that. And then I see some in the chat as well.
Yep, there's a lot of good questions.
A lot of great questions.
But do we want me to, Samia, I just see a chat here. Do you want me to share the package now, the pictures and all that stuff, or do you want me to do that at the end?
We can do that at the end. I think it's really important for us to address the
do some questions. Okay.
Yes, because even the packages can be emailed later on to everybody on the guest list, or even just maybe some on your website. They can go and grab it.
They can go download
if we have time, we'll do it. But I definitely want to get to the Q&As.
Yep, there's some great ones. Ani, which one's your favorite?
Well, there's a bunch of questions that I could probably go through. I don't think I will go one by one. I think that will take a long time. So I'll kind of blend a couple of questions together and respond to them. So I think we already answered the question about between agnostic man and Muslim woman. And so for me personally, that is not an issue whatsoever. Do you do referral service, including finding officiants who will co-officiate? Is it national service? Yes, it is. And so that will be in the package that you can download from our website, and Maisha will continue to share the link for you to do that. And what is the social educational background of these couples? So I think that varies. I've seen obviously a lot of professionals, whether they be lawyers, attorneys, architects, doctors, people in the tech industry, students now too, obviously. So for me, they vary. I think it's just basically a matter of the environment, the work environment that they're in. And yes, I do conduct same-sex marriage. I think I described that. This is, and obviously it is the basis on the definition of zawj as the term meaning soul, and not and a neutral word, not really describing marriage as to, between a man and a woman per se. So I think that the context from which the Quran is interpreting that word in the context of marriages between husband and wife, man and woman, is because of children and because of the rights of the children. And now let me just digress a little bit to say that if you're going to read the Quran and you're going to read when it comes to marriage and divorce and all these marriage issues in the context from the prism of a child's right, you will read it completely and understand it completely different. So I would encourage you to do that. Let's see. Do you make a wedding special during the pandemic? We do Zoom weddings as well during the pandemic. So that is also in the package. And you can converse that with the officiant for whom you decide to hire to do that service. Can you recite or send links to reference in the Quran that states women are allowed to marry non-Muslim men? It would help with convincing my Muslim parents to accept our interfaith relationship. Yes, that is also on our website, on the Marriage Services website. There's at the bottom that there is a video link, and I'll be adding more content to that. There is a very powerful, full-on legal document written by a Pakistani scholar of Islam, Asma Barlas, and it's a bit of a heady reading, but there's no denying after you read that, especially, and particularly for parents who just need a lot of convincing, particularly from the South Asian culture. And I should also say there has been an interpretation from a very, very conservative theologian from the Al-Azhar University of Cairo, which is the Sunni institution. And even he has written a fatwa to say that Muslim women in the Western context, where we are minorities, there is no prohibition for them to marry outside the faith. And so that is in Arabic, unfortunately, but I think with Google Translate that can be included in the resources as well. Jamal, do you want to go on to the others?
Jamal, you're on mute. We can't hear you. It's okay. It happens.
Thank you very much. There was one interesting question that I answered privately in the chat, but somebody was asking, well, is there, because of my experience, doesn't that kind of show that interfaith marriages are less successful than Muslim marriages? And isn't that a reason to stop creating interfaith marriages? And I feel like it's a fair question, but it's one that I ask sometimes. But the reality is that in my experience, it's almost as if the Muslim marriages that could have happened because there was no resistance there. But then the people that maybe were not meant to marry, maybe some of them could have been convinced to marry Muslim partners and it would have worked out okay. But I mentioned that out of 27, only 9 did. The other ones, if we told them, well, all 18 of you got to marry Muslims, it wouldn't have, at least a good number of them would have been forced, and it would have been a disaster. And I didn't spend a lot of time talking about this, but the Muslim marriages in my family were some of that got divorced were some of the most spectacularly tabloid-like divorces. Infidelity, children out of wedlock. When you get a Muslim man who is told he's got to marry a Muslim woman that he doesn't want to marry, it's not a pretty sight. It was awful for the mothers, awful for the kids. You can't force people who to marry. So the best thing is educate people, in an open-minded way. Then the kids learn to trust you, and they trust your opinion, and hopefully they make the right choice for them. But I do think it's probably easier if you have common values, not just religious values, but common values in general. But that doesn't mean that interfaith marriages shouldn't happen. It doesn't mean that interfaith marriages cannot be successful. It doesn't mean that people can't be happy that way.
I want to add add to the value section because the one thing that I've just finished co-authoring with early child development expert is an inclusive Islam curriculum for children rooted in human rights for children for ages 4 to 7. And so we'll be launching that in a month's time. But I think this is the sort of values that we're talking about, because at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter what the person you marry, as long as you have shared values. And shared values cuts across all kinds of religion, race, ethnicity, etc. There is a question here about, have you found families accepting of interfaith marriages? I'm a Pakistani woman, and I know I would be disowned by my family, also causing a lot of stress for everyone. I'm curious if you've witnessed this, and if eventually the family comes around. And the answer for me is yes, in short. But then again, I think it is about educating the family. It is about, I think, really showing respect for each other's traditions. Maybe Jamal has more to add to that, but for me, that the short answer is yes. And the other thing too is that there's this automatic assumption that the children will be raised non-Muslim, because we've been told that automatically the children is going to take the religion of the father, because that has been the tribal interpretation of Islam, right? Now, I've seen a lot of weddings, and I've seen a lot of interfaith marriages. And what I've seen, now Jamal being one of the few exceptions, but I've actually seen whenever the Muslim man marries a non-Muslim woman, the children tend to be non-Muslim, following the mother's religion. So I think, there's enough stats on that.
I think the mother.
I would so agree with that too, Ani. I've been seeing a lot more of that, and maybe some of the bloggers I follow, or some of the interfaith marriages that I have seen. And one of the things is, Ani, I know you answered yes to maybe, will family come around? And just from my couples and also, being a part of a lot of the Facebook groups that are out there for South Asian women and interracial relationship. There's also one for interfaith relationships. I feel like there are times where they get disowned, and I see a lot of really, really tragic and really sad stories. And I always tell, if anybody ever asks me for my input on this, I always say that it's something that you kind of have to still prepare for, and it's really, and when I say prepare for it, it's because it's hard to go through that, right? You can't imagine having a wedding without your family being involved, and you love your family. So the thought of being disowned can be very, very heart-wrenching. And it's one of those things where I can't say, yes, they will absolutely come around. I say that to be prepared and think about how you're going to handle the situation, and think about, the choices that you're about to make, and, what's the game plan. Like, think about all of those things. I think before even thinking about going to the next step of getting married and having a wedding, because sometimes it may not be for everybody. And sometimes people realize it later on, or as the wedding is going on, where they're not excited because they're really sad, and then they realize, I don't want to do this. So it's a lot of different stories that I have heard. So I feel like there are instances where it happens, and it's just about thinking of what action, or what, how would you handle that emotionally.
Yeah.
Can I add something to that topic? Because I feel like it's such an important one when that comes up, because the reality is, I see parents all across the spectrum there, and I do want to say, for everybody in the audience, there are plenty of Muslim families who are like, what, we ideally our kids would marry a Muslim, but we raised them in America. We tried to tell them the best things that we could, but ultimately they got to make their own choices. And obviously, that's it's nice to know that there are Muslim families out there that are that way, and people should know that is the case. Not everybody is so rigid with it, and some of them are very devout religious people, but it's just not in their DNA to say, I'm going to force my kid to do what I think they should do. So that's good. And then there are a lot of families who are maybe more in the middle, where they say, you know what, I want to support my kid, I just don't know how to do this. It's the first time we're dealing with this, and it's and they kind of have to work it out, and to those families, I say to the couples, you got to give them time, because sometimes you find the couple is a little bit impatient, and I'm like, look, I understand this is your choice, but this is something, it's a big deal for your parents too. Maybe it's the first time they've got a kid getting married. Maybe it's the first time in the family that somebody is married outside the religion, and you can't just kind of, sometimes it's gone on for a while, and I understand why these women are losing patience, but sometimes a little bit more patience and a little bit more effort to understand it and let the parents come along helps. But as for the most difficult ones, what we were just talking about, when parents are just like, it's either you do this and then don't come home, right? Those are the obviously the most heartbreaking ones. To those women, whenever I meet them, if there's any on this call, and whenever I meet any of those in the course of my practice, I would just say, you're not alone. It's not, try as much as possible to understand it's not a reflection on you. I know it weighs down on you a lot, but it's not a reflection of who you are. This is the choice that your family has had to make, and you got to do the best thing for you. And as much as it's hard to go ahead and see your family not there, it's probably better to do that and make your own decision than to feel that you're bullied into marrying or not marrying somebody just because of the harshness and frankly sometimes abusiveness of your family. It's not right. And we just know that we're a community where a lot of people who have gone through that experience are, we're involved here. So please join our Facebook group, join our community. You'll find a lot of other people who have gone through those experiences, and we're here to support you.
Absolutely.
Samia, can I add something about the
Yeah.
parents who are abusive?
Oh, it's not okay.
Yes. I have seen that, and it's really, I'm Asian, and I understand the sort of the rigidity and expectations of how you are supposed to be. And mind you, I was raised in a very liberating, my father was incredibly liberating kind of man, and raised me to be that way, to think critically and to be pragmatic about your circumstances and how you carry yourself, etc., and how you interpret the world. But so I was fortunate to be raised in that environment. But sometimes, like I said, sometimes the mother is the more oppressive character out of the two, and that tend to be more misogynistic in their understanding of Islam, because it's really rooted in culture rather than rooted in Islam and the intellect and the intellectual interpretation of Islam. And so I have encouraged couples to really think deep about this, but also to draw the line. Like, if you feel you're referring to the Muslim side, of course, that's sort of our part, I suppose. But in general, to both to the couple, both of them, I would in general say, like, there is a line of them, of you taking control of you as an adult person, and you have to make that decision where that line is between you and your parents, because there are times when the parents are incredibly emotionally abusive, and it's not healthy to be in that relationship. And I don't want to get too personal, so in this, but to say to you that you have to draw that line. And I'm a mother, and I have an adult daughter, and I have made sure to raise my daughter in the most independent and liberating way, because at the end of the day, I want my daughter to make the right decisions for herself when it really matters. And so for future parents out there, I think that is, or future married couples out there, I think that is sort of the premises where I would encourage you to consider, where do you draw that line? And that line is both for the Muslim and the non-Muslim parents, because if you're living in the town where your parents are there is going to be a lot more influence on how you raise your child, what language your child speaks, etc., etc. I don't have that problem, because both my husband and I, we don't have families here. So we have been able to really create the family unit that we want. independent of outside influencers. So that's something really deep and long to think about. There was a question about Catholicism, combining Catholicism and rabbinical traditions, and yes, that's not a problem. Obviously, you have to we have to be paired up with a Catholic priest and a rabbi who is also inclusive, and so that the nature of the traditions that we are combining is the traditions of inclusivity and loving and compassionate God. And so if one of the non-Muslim faith tradition comes from also from a non-tolerant interpretation, then it makes it very challenging. So obviously we're providing the inclusive and loving and accepting version of Islam. The other side also would have to bring to the table the same sort of interpretation of their faith tradition.
Thank you, Ani. I'm going to just add something from the previous question, because we see a lot of people that are chatting here and saying a lot of great things. And I recognize, how hard it is to go through, family situations when having an interfaith or interracial marriage. One of the things I'd like to let everybody know is being a part of a community that maybe have similar experiences can really make you feel less alone, because you're not alone. You are not alone. There's Facebook groups out there. If you need me to kind of guide you where to go, there's one specifically for women. There's also MPV. There's so many outlets out there. And just to share a little bit of a story on my end, I've been with my husband who's Black, and I've been with him for about 10 years and married for 5. And I kid you not, I felt so alone. And those support groups and those Facebook groups is like a space where you can be free and talk about anything you want, ask any questions. So I completely agree with both Ani and Jamal that having that community and support is just phenomenal, and it can make a really big difference to you, your mental health, and just kind of your experience through it. So if anybody wants me to lead you to these types of groups or Facebook groups, please feel free to message or email me, because I think Maisha has listed some of the resources on the chat. But I just wanted to add that you guys are not alone.
Any other questions that we want to address?
Yeah, Ani, I see one in the chat.
Premarital
yeah.
courses. Yeah. I want to say that I've started to offer a session or two for couples. But I just want to stress that I am not a licensed counselor, a marriage counselor in that regard, but I can counsel in the sense of, I've been married for more than 30 years, and in a mixed marriage scenario with an adult child, I can just offer sort of the hurdles for you to avoid and to counsel in this regard from different faith perspectives. And I will come at it not from, and I can assure you, I do not come from a bias towards Islam or Muslim. I will come to it as a bias towards the health or the well-being of your potential marriage. So, and just email us at info@mpvusa.org.
Great question. Ani, there's a couple that I accidentally put answered and they weren't answered for some reason. And there's some in the chat. Let me read one that's in the chat. I think it was only sent to us as a panelist. And it says, hope you all can give your thoughts about this situation. My mother is concerned that if my non-Muslim partner takes the Shahada to keep the peace, and won't be practicing Muslim, then our marriage won't be accepted Islamically. She's also concerned about us partaking in the Hindu ceremony prior to the Nikkah. Any comments for that? And I think she's actually watching it with her mom today.
Jamal, you want to go first?
Let me make sure I understand the question. So, will it be accepted if there is no shahada? Is that the question?
Yeah, I think it's more of just kind of like
No.
any thoughts that you
That's
guys can share. It's in the chat, so if you look,
Oh,
if it's only to us panelists, so it's saying that her mom is concerned that if her non-Muslim partner takes the shahada to keep the peace, there won't they won't be practicing Islam, and then as a result of that, their marriage won't be accepted Islamically. And another concern is, her having to have the Hindu ceremony before the Nikkah, because they're doing it the day before or a couple of days
yeah.
before.
I don't think, in my experience, the family, the having the shahada done prior to the marriage is such a, like, every faith-based tradition has their things that are just very important because they've always been done that way. The Hindu that's why they have to have a Hindu tradition, right, or a Hindu ceremony for this, because they don't have a conversion, but they have some other things that it's like, well, this is very important. It's just a huge deal for families to accept a marriage without the shahada being done. Most families, and even a lot of imams, so they all have maybe different standards, but a lot of families and imams will say, look, the important thing, they'll be accepting of what I would say, for lack of a better word, a soft shahada, saying, look, I believe in these big things, and I'm going to be a part of this community. And afterwards, I'm going to be open-minded, and I'm going to, be a good son-in-law and part of this community, but I'm not going to try and practice all of these things. And the family knows that, and they're not asking for that, right? I do think if you have a situation like that, you can say the shahada, and it works out. It works out okay. I know a lot of marriages that have worked that way, and I've conducted marriages that have worked that way. I don't find that it's not accepted by most families, especially when their backs are against the wall. And it's like, well, we're either doing this or they're getting married by a judge in the court. As far as participating in the Hindu ceremony, I don't find as many families that are against their child participating in a non-Muslim ceremony as much as we find that they really think it's important to do the Muslim ceremony right. And then what you do in the other one, it's okay, right? As long as you're not doing something that is directly against Islam or something like that. That's been my experience.
So let me, I have a different point of view here. The problem with doing this sort of shahada where you don't really mean it as a religious conviction is a slippery slope, because then, as the questioner was saying, then what about if he doesn't fast and he doesn't pray? And so it's a slippery slope. It's like you do the shahada and then you're expected to do A, B, C, D, E, F, G. So when that's not who you are. That's why I always say, you want to get married, you need to come to it in the most truthful and sincerely and honest way. And for parents to expect the non-Muslim to convert when that is not their conviction, well, even the Quran and Allah doesn't expect you to convert to Islam when you are not in that conviction. And then again, there are different ways of believing in the Creator. And so I think this narrow definition is very problematic and is just going to make things more complicated for the couple down the line. I think it's a hard truth. It's a hard path to lead and to walk on, but it's a choice that the couple needs to make. And it's a choice that the parents really need to be supportive. At the end of the day, is that a good guy? Is that guy really a great human being? That's all. It's all about character. The Quran is so clear about character, character, character. Why do we forget that?
Absolutely. And the person asking this question, he's amazing. Her partner is amazing. So I really agree with you, Ani, on that character. So we need to wrap things up here. I know there's a lot more questions. There's one more that we'll ask and then go into Jamal sharing the packages. And I'm sure if you guys have any questions or anything further, feel free to email or send them a message. One of the questions here is, okay, so thank you so much for this webinar and all the work you do. My fiance is Muslim and I'm Sikh. I'm not converting or changing my name after marriage. He is somewhat concerned about us traveling to Muslim countries as a married couple and not being recognized as a married couple. I would prefer to have a female Muslim officiant for our interfaith wedding, but he thinks, yes, but he thinks that a female Muslim officiant name on the marriage certificate could be troublesome since it's not common. Ani, any thoughts on this? I think you're the perfect person to answer this question.
Yes. So we, once you marry with us, we give you an Islamic marriage Nikkah certificate. And so with the witness signatures, your name, the Islamic calendar that you were married, etc. And the signature of the officiant isn't a signature of officiant. It doesn't have to have the name of the officiant. So I'm actually hypersensitive about that as well. Even when I traveled to Malaysia, there was one time I had to actually produce a marriage certificate to show that we were married, and I was really, come on, I was really annoyed, but I understand that is some of the things that we go through in Muslim, particularly in conservative Muslim societies. Yes, I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, thank you. And one of the most common questions that I'm seeing on the chat and on Q&A, and you can actually go into the Q&A and maybe answer it by typing, but we would, even for myself, so I'm gonna say we would love to see the full documentary that you guys have. So where can we access that is one, and two, where can they find MPV if they want to be part of it or want more information? Because a lot of attendees are from all over the world. So, they're wondering if you guys provide services around the globe.
Okay, so I'll answer this again. So first of all, I would encourage you to go to mpvusa.org and to explore our website and to sign up to our monthly newsletter, because that'll give you a lot of information about what we do programmatically, what our 8 chapters do, because we do have chapters in different cities and states. And if it's close to you, you could join. But obviously right now everything is virtual, so we've got a lot of virtual programming that you can join. Los Angeles, San Francisco, New York, Boston. We have Miami, Orlando, Florida, and Washington, D.C., as well as Chicago and Columbus, Ohio. So all that is on our website. And not only that, but we really have a lot of partner organizations all over the world. We have like 5 countries in Latin America that are also doing similar work that we are doing in their particular society communities. Of course, in Canada, the UK, Germany, France, Italy, the Netherlands, and Switzerland. So, what we are doing has really proliferated all over the world. Alhamdulillah, to say that, that there are a lot of Western Muslims in Western society and democracies that are going through the same struggles, because these are Muslim women who are working outside the home and they are educated, and so therefore they find themselves in tendency to marry outside the faith. So with there is a Vimeo link or a PBS link to the documentary about my work in Muslims for Progressive Values. So I will share it here. I will share it somewhere. I'll figure it out, but we'll share it with you, and then Samia can also email it out to all those who have RSVP'd, and I will also post it on the YouTube channel as well.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ani. And one of the things I like to add with that, with having interfaith weddings and marriages, the whole planning part of the wedding can also be challenging. You know, there's a lot of wedding planners that join today as well. So if you're looking for somebody locally or somebody that that you want just, you know, as somebody to kind of execute your day and help you with all of the logistics, let me know and I can connect you with, you know, some of the amazing planners here if I can't help you. Okay, so I think we are coming to an end, but before that, Jamal, do you want to share the package,
Sure.
the screen?
Okay, so if you go, is that visible?
Yes.
That? Okay, great. So if you visit www.mpvusa.org and look for our, under programs, if you look for our marriage services, then you can get this packet. And this is the introduction, a written introduction to our service. You can see here, there's a brief description of what we do. This is our MPV principles of inclusion, which all of our officiants uphold in their work. And then we've got a number of our officiants that we do that we work with are listed over here. So you can go through this. And then the booking procedure is listed over here. That's a copy of our certificate that you get from getting married with us. So again, this is available on mpvusa.org, and you can go there and download it if you like.
Awesome. Thank you. Ani, Jamal, any like closing remarks before I say my part?
Yes, sure. Jamal, can you stop sharing, please?
Oh, sure. Sorry.
It's all right. This has been really a beautiful experience, Samia. Thank you for organizing this and coming to us with this idea. And we hope to do more. I'm sure there'll be more demand, and we can probably take different subject matters and then really drill down even deeper on this issue. And so we can maybe be more specific to particular faith traditions or combination of Muslim, Christian, Muslim, Judaism, Hindu, etc., and then be more specific in the subject matter. But I think that overall, I hope we can be supportive to all those that are seeking this kind of interfaith marriages, the counseling. We are a progressive Muslim community, and like I said, it is our responsibility, our duty to live our lives as true to the Quran as possible. And to do that, you have to start with yourself. And that is all that I have basically tried to do in the last 15, 16 years. And so I am very grateful that it has proliferated the way it has, and I'm very grateful and alhamdulillah to the doors that the Creator has opened for me and the possibilities for all people out there. And just simply, you know, it's just a message of love and compassion. That's all there is to it. And as simple as it is actually sometimes so difficult to practice and live it. And I hope that what you've learned from this webinar here is not just about marriage services, but it's actually about the bigger picture. It's about you as a couple. It's about you and your children, you and your family, your Muslim and non-Muslim families. And how are you going to create that enriching life for yourselves and for your family? And I leave with this parting note to say that the most important thing about the Quran, there is, there's a surah that says basically God is closer to you than your jugular vein, which is right here. And there's a hadith that also says that, where Prophet Muhammad said, to know yourself is to know God. If you take these two together, and that is sort of your closest lighthouse, your moral compass, that's all really you need to strengthen yourself and your conviction and your spirituality. That has been for me and is unshakable. So I hope that you've gotten at least that from from us, and hopefully you will get more out of that in creating a community with us, with Muslims for Progressive Values.
Thank you, Ani. Oh my God, I'm trying not to cry. And that's why I keep moving and fidgeting, because I'm so emotional. And I think, you know, you and Jamal have impacted so many people in this chat room. Jamal, anything you would like to add?
No, I just think I just want just notes of thanks, Samia, for your efforts for our community and for putting this together. And thank you to Ani as well. It's been a privilege to get to work with you all in all this and to just participate in this. It's been a wonderful experience. Alhamdulillah, you know, it's and inshallah it keeps going well.
Yeah, and inshallah we can probably have, you know, some more, you know, chats and maybe some intimate conversations as well. And we can talk about that later. But Ani, Jamal, thank you so much for even doing this and you know, entertaining my crazy ideas and you know, coming together. And I wanted to ask you guys, like, for MPV, for anybody that wants to join Muslims for Progressive Values, it's really open to anyone, right? They don't have to be an interfaith marriage. It's open to anybody that that kind of values what you guys value.
We have a lot of like
Also, yeah.
I'm surprised, Ani. Sorry, I know you have something to say here too, but I'm surprised at how many Muslim couples that don't have any reason to seek us out, because the interfaith marriages, you know, obviously we get them because nobody else will marry them, so that's why we all find them. But the Muslim couples, we have a lot of couples who say, listen, this is just, we want this. This is how we believe Islam is. We want this at our wedding. Parents will say the same thing. We have a lot of families like that, and it's much more than anybody would expect. So anybody is absolutely welcome to join.
Awesome. And I hope, you know, we have maybe something in Texas, because I see the great events you guys are doing in New York City, and I'm getting so much FOMO from it. But yes, thank you. Ani, any closing words before we close out? Anything else?
I'm good. Thank you,
Okay.
everyone.
And thank you for our tech team behind the scenes that's here. So they did a great job in you know, putting this on YouTube. But yes, thank you, everybody. Hope you have left here with something new that you learned today. Thank you, guys. Have a good day.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody.